There are four types of fermentation. But what exactly is fermentation? Simply put, fermentation is a process where microorganisms convert carbohydrates into alcohol or organic acids. During fermentation, these microorganisms feed on the available sugars and nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, and vitamins to produce energy and grow. While alcohol and organic acids are the main byproducts, they also create vitamins, essential amino acids, aroma compounds, and other substances that benefit our health. Once the simple sugars are used up, the microorganisms produce enzymes to break down complex carbohydrates in fruits or vegetables into simpler sugars that they can continue to use for energy. But why do we ferment our food? Fermentation preserves food by creating an acidic, alcoholic, or oxygen-free environment where harmful bacteria can't grow. More than that, it boosts the nutritional value of foods by making nutrients more digestible and increasing the levels of beneficial compounds like vitamins and antioxidants. Additionally, the live microorganisms from fermented foods can multiply in our gut, helping to break down food and release its nutrients. Foods like sauerkraut, kimchi, yogurt, and kombucha are all great examples of how fermentation can make food healthier. Different types of fermented foods or drinks are done by different microorganisms and under different conditions. These are the four main types of fermentation. Number 1. Bacterial fermentation. This is one of the most common types of fermentation, where bacteria convert sugars into organic acids. The organic acids produced lower the pH of the food, preserving it while adding beneficial probiotics that promote gut health. The most well-known bacterial fermentations are lactic acid and acetic acid fermentation. Lactic acid fermentation is an anaerobic process, meaning it occurs in the absence of oxygen, and is typical for foods like sauerkraut, kimchi, and yogurt. Acetic acid fermentation, on the other hand, is an aerobic process, meaning it requires oxygen to convert alcohol into acetic acid. This process is common in vinegar production and is also an essential part of kombucha fermentation. Number 2. Yeast fermentation. Yeast are a unique type of fungi, not too different from the mushrooms we know. The key difference is that yeast are single-celled organisms, behaving more like bacteria than the multicellular fungi we're familiar with. There are thousands of yeast species, and while most of them produce alcohol from sugar, every yeast species is different and produces different byproducts, making yeast very interesting for food and biotechnological applications. Typical products from yeast fermentation are alcoholic beverages, bread, and even chocolate, where yeast plays a key role in the fermentation of cacao beans, developing the flavors we associate with chocolate. Number 3. Mold fermentation. Mold fermentation involves certain molds breaking down complex carbohydrates and proteins into simpler compounds. This process is typically aerobic, meaning mold requires oxygen to grow. Foods like tempeh, miso, and certain cheeses are fermented using molds such as aspergillus or penicillium. Compared to yeast or bacteria, mold grows much slower, but it produces a greater variety of enzymes capable of breaking down complex structures. This means mold doesn't rely on easily available sugars. Mold fermentation enhances the nutritional value of food, but unlike bacteria or yeast, mold doesn't have probiotic benefits and cannot colonize our gut. Number 4. Mixed fermentation. Mixed fermentation involves the interaction of different microorganisms, such as bacteria and yeast, or sometimes bacteria and mold, working together to ferment food. This process creates complex flavors and textures, as each microorganism contributes its own byproducts, leading to a more diverse and robust final product. A great example is kombucha, which is fermented by both yeast and bacteria. First, the yeast converts sugars into alcohol, and then bacteria transform that alcohol into organic acids. This combination creates the tangy fizzy drink we know as kombucha, packed with probiotics and organic acids that support gut health. Fermentation, whether driven by bacteria, yeast, mold, or a combination, enhances both the flavor and nutritional value of our food.